The radio came through clear, controlled, and tight. Overwatch, we acknowledge your report. Possible disturbance marked, but negative on engagement. I stayed behind the glass, steady, watching the valley breathe in heat and dust. Command, I have visual confirmation. Buried charges in pattern placement. Enemy sniper positioned opposite ridge, observing advancing formation. Static filled the line for a moment, then the reply returned, calm but restrained. Copy, Overwatch. Rules of engagement remain in effect. Possible civilian presence reported in outer sector. You are not cleared to fire without confirmed hostile weapon discharge. Repeat, do not engage unless fired upon. Below, the battalion continued forward. Through my scope, the desert looked still, almost empty, but heat shimmer exposed what the eye could not see. Thin lines in the sand, subsurface metal. Tripwires stretched in silence, the geometry of a kill zone waiting to close. Wind value, half left, light but steady. Mirage beginning to rise. I adjusted slightly, watching distance through my mill dots as the formation moved closer to the hidden pattern. My finger rested on the trigger, then I lifted it away. For a long second, I almost obeyed. Court-martial was not theory. Loss of rank, loss of career. One decision could erase everything I had built in 9 years of service. Below, one soldier reached back and tightened the strap on his helmet. Another turned his head, laughing at something I could not hear. One of them carried a small photograph taped to his gear. Family, home. A life beyond this valley. They kept walking. The radio repeated, firm and final. Overwatch, hold fire. I steadied my breathing and watched the crosshairs settle again, the weight of the choice heavier than any firefight. That was the moment everything changed. Subscribe to my channel, Lady Veteran Stories, for more real military stories, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. My name is Staff Sergeant Rachel Mercer. This happened in 2013 in a dry operations corridor outside Fort Rainier, a place most maps barely marked and most people would never recognize. By then, I had spent 9 years in uniform, most of that time behind a rifle, learning that patience and precision mattered more than speed. Our unit had been assigned to support a joint operation tracking a militia group moving weapons through isolated desert routes. It was not an officially declared war zone, but the risk was real enough. Every movement was deliberate. Every order carried weight, no headlines, no recognition, just long hours of watching, recording, and calculating. That morning began routine. Pale sky, thin air, and a valley stretched wide below our ridge. Intelligence suggested the enemy had shifted north during the night. Command believed the route below had been abandoned and ordered a battalion to advance and secure the corridor. From my Overwatch position, I began logging data in my dope book. Elevation confirmed. Wind value light, drifting from half left. Mirage beginning to form along the valley floor, distorting edges in the heat. Standard conditions, nothing unusual at first glance. But the longer I observed, the more the terrain felt wrong. The desert does not hide easily. Disturbance leaves marks, subtle but visible to trained eyes. I noticed faint irregular lines beneath the sand, too straight to be natural, a slight metallic edge reflecting weak sunlight. A shadow forming where no rock stood. Small details, but details matter. I adjusted magnification and checked again through mill dots, measuring distance against the advancing formation below. The battalion moved steadily, unaware, boots pushing dust into the air behind them. Calm, disciplined, trusting the path ahead. I transmitted my first report, clear and precise. Possible buried objects. Patterned disturbance. Request aerial confirmation. Command acknowledged. Satellite scan showed no confirmed threat. Thermal imaging showed no active heat signatures. Without confirmed hostile activity, the advance would continue under current rules of engagement. Below, the formation pressed forward. I watched through the glass, recording wind drift, confirming range, updating dope entries. Yet the pattern beneath the sand continued to bother me. Too deliberate, too controlled. Then light shifted slightly across the valley floor, and the shape beneath the surface became clearer. Not debris. Not coincidence. Placement. Careful placement. I transmitted again, describing the pattern in detail. Rectangular outlines beneath the sand. Possible charges. Distance from advancing unit decreasing. Request, immediate reassessment. Command responded measured and cautious. Without full confirmation, engagement authority remained restricted. Continue observation. Do not engage unless fired upon. I exhaled slowly and kept watching. Below, the battalion continued forward, unaware of what lay beneath their path. And I began to understand that something in the valley was waiting. Heat shimmer thickened across the valley floor, bending light until shapes beneath the sand became clearer. Straight edges, uniform spacing. Not natural, not debris. Patterned placement. I increased magnification and steadied the mill dots against the ground. Charges, more than a few. Many. I opened my dope book, confirming range and angle, then transmitted. Command. I have visual on buried explosives. Pattern confirmed. Multiple placements across Central Valley. Static answered first, then a calm, controlled reply. Copy. Overwatch. We are reviewing. Continue observation. Below, the battalion advanced in steady formation, unaware. Dust lifted with each step, drifting slowly in the heat. Calm posture. Weapons low. No sign they sensed anything wrong. I scanned again, refining the view. The pattern was too clean to mistake. Charges aligned to trap movement toward the center. Whoever built it understood timing, distance, and human behavior. This was not a defensive field. It was an ambush waiting for completion. Command, confirm hostile intent, I transmitted. Explosives appear armed. The reply came measured. Aerial scan negative for heat signatures. No confirmed detonation triggers visible. Maintain ROE. Do not engage unless fired upon. Wind value steady, half left. Mirage increasing. I adjusted slightly, tracking the advancing line through the mill dots. Distance closing. Then a brief flash cut through the heat. I shifted focus toward the opposite ridge. Glass. A reflection too sharp to be natural. I narrowed the scope and held still. A figure lay prone between broken rock, partially concealed, rifle aligned toward the valley. Not searching, not scanning. Waiting. Enemy sniper. His barrel pointed directly toward the advancing formation below. I transmitted immediately. Command, hostile sniper confirmed opposite ridge. Request clearance to engage. Silence followed. Long enough to feel heavy. Then the response returned, firm but controlled. Negative, Overwatch. Possible civilian presence, still unconfirmed in outer sector. Engagement not authorized under current ROE. Do not fire unless fired upon. Below, the battalion moved closer to the outer edge of the explosive pattern. I checked distance again through mill dots. Closing. The sniper across the ridge adjusted slightly, aligning tighter toward the same line I followed. He was not preparing to move. He was preparing to fire. I transmitted again, voice steady but tighter. Command, hostile engagement imminent. Request immediate clearance, static, static. Then the same measured answer, standby. Maintain observation, do not engage. The soldiers below kept moving, step by step, unaware of the geometry closing around them. And the valley remained silent, waiting. Time slowed into something thick and heavy. Through my scope, I tracked the formation one step at a time, measuring distance with the mill dots against the buried pattern beneath the sand. 190 meters. 185. Closing. Wind value steady from half left, 4 miles per hour. Mirage boiling low across the valley floor, distorting edges but not enough to hide the shapes I had already confirmed. I logged the data automatically, the way training had carved into instinct. Inside my headset, command voices overlapped. Analysts reviewing feeds. Officers discussing possible civilian movement in the outer sector. Rules of engagement repeated. Visual confirmation required. No clearance without hostile fire. Procedure holding firm. And below, the battalion kept advancing. I felt doubt begin to press in, quiet but dangerous. What if the aerial scan was right? What if the pattern beneath the sand was old, inactive, harmless? What if firing without authorization triggered consequences far beyond this valley? Court-martial was not theory. Loss of rank, loss of career. Everything I had built in 9 years erased by one decision. I lifted my finger off the trigger. For a moment, I let the crosshairs drift away from the sniper across the ridge. I watched the formation below instead. Soldiers walking in steady rhythm, unaware. One adjusted his sling. Another glanced sideways, probably speaking to the man beside him. Small, ordinary movements, far removed from the calculation happening above them. Then the sniper moved. Slow. Controlled, intentional. He shifted his body slightly, tightening his alignment toward the advancing formation, not scanning, not searching, preparing. That movement erased doubt. I returned my finger to the trigger and transmitted again. Command, hostile sniper confirmed, aiming on friendly formation. Request immediate clearance to engage. The reply came firm, unchanged. Negative, Overwatch. Engagement not authorized under current ROE. Do not fire unless fired upon. Below, the lead elements of the battalion crossed the outer edge of the buried pattern. One more stretch forward and they would enter the center line, where the charges were thickest, where escape would narrow to nothing. I checked range again through the mill dots. 170 meters. The sniper across the ridge remained steady, rifle fixed, waiting for the exact moment when the formation would be fully exposed. Inside my chest, the weight of the decision settled hard. Orders demanded restraint. Duty demanded discipline. But responsibility does not always align with instruction. Wind steady. Elevation confirmed. Dope unchanged. The radio repeated, calm but final. Overwatch, hold fire. Below, the soldiers kept moving step by step toward something they could not see. And I understood that the choice in front of me was no longer distant or theoretical. It was now. I settled back behind the rifle and rebuilt the picture the way training demanded. Wind value half left, 4 miles per hour. Mirage, boiling but readable. I checked my dope book, confirmed elevation, confirmed drop. Mill dots steady on the ridgeline. The enemy sniper filled the glass again, calm and patient, his rifle aligned toward the same advancing formation I was tracking. If he fired first, the sequence would begin. Charges would detonate in chain reaction. The valley would close. There would be no warning and no space to escape. I pressed the transmit key one last time. Command, hostile sniper confirmed. Friendly formation seconds from centerline. Request immediate clearance to engage. Silence. Then the answer, controlled and firm. Negative, Overwatch. Engagement not authorized under current rules of engagement. Possible civilian presence remains unverified. Do not fire unless fired upon. My finger rested on the trigger, then I lifted it away. For one long breath, I almost obeyed. If I fired now, it would be a direct violation. Court-martial, loss of rank. Loss of career. Years of service reduced to one decision. I let the crosshairs drift slightly off target and watched the soldiers below instead. One young soldier reached back and tightened his helmet strap. Another laughed, turning his head toward the man beside him. On the back of one pack, a small photograph was taped beneath clear plastic. Family, home. A life waiting far beyond this valley. They kept walking. Distance closing through the mill dots. One more stretch, and they would enter the center of the pattern. The sniper across the ridge shifted, tightening his aim, preparing. My breathing slowed. Inhale. Exhale. Natural respiratory pause. I placed my finger back on the trigger and settled the crosshairs. Decision made. I crossed the line. I fired. The shot cracked across the valley, sharp and final. The enemy sniper dropped the instant the round reached him. One moment he was steady in the glass, the next his body slackened and his rifle slid from his hands. For a fraction of a second, the valley froze, silent and suspended. Then everything broke open. Movement erupted along the opposite ridge as hidden fighters revealed themselves too early. Their timing shattered. Some of the buried charges detonated out of sequence, not in a single wave, but in scattered bursts that tore through the sand in uneven explosions. Dust columns rose fast, rolling across the valley floor, turning clear sight into shifting haze. Contact front, contact ridge. Voices burst across the radio. Below, the battalion reacted instantly. The formation halted before entering the center line. Soldiers dropped low, spreading into cover, rifles up, scanning ridges and shadows, now fully aware. The forward motion that would have sealed their fate had been broken. Inside my headset, command voices returned, sharp and urgent. Overwatch, report. Who fired? Confirm situation. I stayed behind the glass, tracking movement through the mirage and dust. Wind unchanged, elevation steady. The trap no longer hidden. Engineering teams moved carefully into the outer zone under Overwatch guidance. One by one, they began locating buried charges. Small flags marked positions in the sand where danger had waited minutes earlier. Controlled hands worked slow and precise, disabling triggers, isolating wires, neutralizing explosives. Dozens. More than initial estimates. Through my scope, the pattern became fully visible as the dust cleared. Charges placed in a layered grid designed to close inward and trap everything at the center. If the formation had advanced just a little further, detonation would have come all at once. No escape, no recovery. Losses counted in numbers, no report would soften. The radio grew quieter as that understanding spread. Command's tone shifted from urgency to controlled realization. Engineering confirms extensive placement, multiple charges, Overwatch, continue observation. I watched as the last visible explosives were marked and secured. Smoke thinned, movement slowed. The valley, once silent and deceptive, now exposed its truth completely. 214 soldiers remained in position, alive, breathing through dust and aftermath. Static faded across the channel, and then, when the full scale of what had nearly happened became clear, command fell silent. By late afternoon, the valley was secure. Smoke had thinned, dust had settled, and the engineers had cleared the last of the buried charges. The pattern that had nearly sealed the battalion inside a wall of fire was gone. Weapons were accounted for. Positions confirmed. 214 soldiers alive. But the operation was not finished for me. I was ordered to report to command immediately. The debrief room felt colder than the desert outside. No noise. No casual talk. Just screens, officers, and procedure. My rifle had already been taken for inspection. My file sat open on the table. Staff Sergeant Mercer, one officer, began, voice controlled but sharp. You engaged a target without clearance under restricted rules of engagement. Confirm. Yes, sir. No defense. No explanation yet. Just fact. The footage began to play across the screen. Frame by frame, the valley appeared again. The buried pattern beneath the sand, the advancing formation. The enemy sniper across the ridge. My scope view. The shot. The premature detonations. The halted advance. Engineers marking explosives, one by one. Dozens, enough to erase the entire formation. No one spoke while the recording continued. When it ended, silence held the room for several long seconds. Then another officer spoke, colder. "You understand this action could have resulted in court-martial and imprisonment?" "Yes, sir." The commanding general, who had remained silent until then, stepped forward. His voice was quiet, but it carried weight. "Play the sequence again." The footage repeated. Slower this time. Clearer. The sniper aligning toward the formation. The distance closing. The buried grid beneath the sand. The timing. When it ended again, the general looked around the room, then spoke. "If she had obeyed, we would be writing 214 letters tonight." Silence followed. No praise came after. No applause. Only consequence. My promotion review was suspended. Formal reprimand entered into record. Removed from active Overwatch rotation pending further evaluation. Not prison, but not untouched either. The meeting ended without ceremony. Later that night, I stepped outside into the cooling desert air. The valley lay quiet beneath fading light, as if nothing had ever been hidden there. But I knew what had almost happened. And I knew the cost of the choice I had made. The mission moved on, the way missions always do. New patrol routes. New Overwatch shifts for others. New reports filed and archived. Officially, the Valley incident became just another operation entry in a long chain of records. Unofficially, it followed me everywhere. I was no longer on active Overwatch. My rifle stayed locked in the armory more often than in my hands. My promotion review remained frozen, my file marked with formal reprimand. No one treated me with hostility, but nothing felt the same either. In the military, consequences do not always come loudly. Sometimes they arrive quietly and stay. Days turned into weeks. Then one afternoon, near the range perimeter, I saw a small group approaching across the dust, 4 soldiers from that battalion. No formation, no ceremony, just boots on dry ground and steady steps toward where I stood. They stopped a few feet away. For a moment, none of us spoke. Then one of them stepped forward and extended his hand. Firm grip, no theatrics, no speeches. Another followed. Then another, one by one. Their uniforms were worn from the field, dust still caught in seams. Faces tired but steady, alive. The youngest among them paused before leaving. He looked at me for a second, like he was trying to find the right words, then spoke quietly. "We never saw it coming." I nodded once. There was nothing else to say. They turned and walked back toward their unit, their silhouettes fading slowly into the distance. I watched them until they disappeared beyond the ridgeline. That night, I opened my dope book, wind logs, elevation notes, previous engagements, numbers and corrections written in steady lines. I added one more entry. Valley engagement, 214 friendly personnel. Survived. I closed the book and sat in silence for a long time, not thinking about the order, not thinking about the reprimand, only about the image of those 4 soldiers walking away under an open sky. In this line of work, outcomes are rarely clean. Right decisions still carry cost. Duty does not guarantee recognition, and survival, when it comes, often arrives quietly. But they walked away, and that mattered more than anything else. Years have passed since that day in the desert valley, but the details have never left me. I still remember the moment before the shot when everything narrowed to a single decision. Not noise, not chaos. Just a breath held between duty and consequence. People often think war is constant motion and thunder. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it is calculation. Wind value, distance through mil dots, a steady hold during the natural respiratory pause, a decision made in silence that cannot be taken back. 214 soldiers walked out of that valley alive. That is what stayed with me. Not the reprimand in my file, not the promotion I never received, just the simple truth that one moment, one decision can change everything for people who will never know how close they came. I still keep that dope entry. Wind, elevation, correction, and one final line written beneath it. Valley engagement. 214 survived. Sometimes, late at night, when everything is still, I think about that valley. Not with pride, not with regret, just with understanding. They walked away. That was enough. Subscribe to my channel, Lady Veteran Stories, for more real military stories, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from.